The Riot Grrrl movement began in the early 90s, when a group of women from Olympia, Washington were sick of disappearing into the shadow of the patriarchal industry. Riot Grrrl, sometimes spelled Riot Grrrl, both double and triple R are acceptable, was a movement with the goal to create feminist empowerment using punk rock. One such artist that has been categorised under the umbrella of feminism in punk rock is X-Ray Spex. To expand on X-Ray Spex, they were a band from the 1970s originating in London. The frontwoman of the band, stage name Polystyrene, was a biracial woman. With her ethnic background, she offered perspective unlike most others at the time. Styrene, along with many others, helped to pave the road for the feminist punk rockers of the Riot Grrrl era through her use of poetic and political lyricism, and the influence of her experimental music still remains relevant today. Another artist that helped to shape punk into what it is today is Sister Rosetta Tharpe, a singer, songwriter and guitarist popular in the 1930s and 40s, but whose influence is still relevant today.
This train is a clean train. This train.
Referred to as the original Soul Sister and the godmother of rock and roll, she influenced many artists from Elvis Presley and Little Richard to later guitarists such as Eric Clapton. She shook the world of music with her unconventional style and vocals, and was one of the first musicians that ushered in the lyricism that was, and still is, essential to the punk movement. As an openly queer black woman recording music in the 40s, she sang about relationships and sexuality with an openness that was revolutionary for the time. Her music not only laid the groundwork for modern rock and punk, but she also inspired black and queer musicians to continue to blaze new trails in the industry of music. Punk would not exist the way it is today without Tharpe, Styrene, or other black musicians who dare to express their feelings and their stories, and yet are so often left out of the spotlight. Music like theirs was categorised as Riot Grrrl, despite the movement not being as inclusive to anyone who wasn't middle-class white women. Now, to continue on the subject of the Riot Grrrl movement. As mentioned before, the Riot Grrrl movement began in the early 90s with a group of women from Olympia, Washington. In music, Riot Grrrls addressed taboo topics, ranging from abuse to female sexuality and discrimination in the music industry. Instead of being passive, as women were and still are stereotypically assumed to be, Riot Grrrls used evocative lyrics and vocals to take back power and reclaim the times they were left powerless. By changing the word girl into more of a growling word, it subverts the term responsible for frequently belittling women to an emphasis of the anger that fuels the Riot Grrrl movement. However, as mentioned before, the movement gave middle-class white women a power to explore complex emotions in the public eye, but often left black and queer communities out of the conversation, despite these communities being a main foundation of the punk rock industry that the Riot Grrrl movement was using to convey their messages. While the Riot Grrrl movement managed to reduce the sexism in many punk scenes, they created a few problems within the movement, such as the lack of inclusivity to people who were black and or queer. For example, some women included in the movement were TERFs, a term used to support statements against trans women. Kathleen Hanna, who is one of the women who began the movement, came out and said, "This is not what the original intent of the movement was, and that she supports trans rights." In conjunction with the development of Riot Grrrl was the development of third-wave feminism, which happened in the early 90s. Compared to the second wave of feminism of the 60s and 70s, the movement focused on diversity and inclusion and worked to redefine the meaning of feminism. The new wave had a focus on reproductive rights and equality in the workplace, similar to the second wave. Issues such as date rape and sexual harassment regained prominence in the 90s, giving the third wave of feminism more fuel for the fire. With the third wave of feminism, the Riot Grrrl movement developed as well in the early 90s. It encouraged women to participate in punk scenes as an outlet for self-expression. The young feminists that began the movement began reclaiming derogatory terms such as slut by painting the words across their bodies. The term Riot Grrrl was coined because they wanted to begin a girl riot against the male-dominated American society. To spread the word, they began making zines, which are small, homemade magazines that are photocopied and given out. They were a popular way for riot girls to share their views and discuss topics such as sexual abuse and eating disorders. Another way to express the Riot Grrrl views was punk music, and with their participation in the punk scene, it helped to further shape the feminist punk we have today. With the development of the Riot Grrrl movement, many bands began to form, notably Bratmobile and Bikini Kill, whose members were the women who helped to begin the movement. Returning to Bikini Kill,
She's the queen of the neighborhood. She's got the hottest track in town. That girl, she holds her head up so high. I think I wanna be a messenger.
A lot of their music talks about similar taboo topics that were mentioned before, such as female self-pleasure, unfulfilling relationships with men, and eating disorders. By talking about these topics, it helps to widespread feelings that many women have, but disguising it with an upbeat punk tune. Moving into the 2000s to modern day, Riot Grrrl and the subsequent results of the movement, being the music made because of it, have inspired bands and music in the 2000s to modern time. Decades after the formation of the movement, young people are still angry at the world, the older generations, and the future. This brought back a resurgence of punk music, shaped by new and experimental mixes and the shared nostalgia for the music of the 80s and 90s. Such modern bands, inspired by the music of the Riot Grrrl era, are Slutever,
There's more love on the TV. I wish it wasn't.
Mommy Longlegs,
1, 2.
The Priscillas, and the Linda Lindas.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The modern punk movement draws from Riot Grrrl in combating flaws of the historically male-dominated scene. However, it takes this a step further in promoting self-expression outside of the traditional limits. Punk music provides a community for difficult topics to be addressed outside the restraints of mainstream society. However, it is important to note that the punk community is still restrained by gendered and racialized power dynamics. The original Riot Grrrl movement ended for many reasons, but through time, Riot Grrrl changed and isn't going anytime soon. The movement is having a considerable resurgence due to social media, but the users are attempting to keep a more accepting space that is more diverse for women and people everywhere. Unlike the feminist punk movement it originated from, today's punk scenes offer a more inclusive lens. Through time, punk has changed, and today it is creating a genre that allows more people to be included in the conversation. People who were once excluded. People who helped shape the way punk is today.